Hey there, guys, and welcome on back. I'm glad to have you here today. And what we're going to be doing for this video is another one of my hopes and predictions for something that's going to happen with Factorio. Specifically, this time in regards to what the devs are going to reveal or announce this Friday in a blog post. So, if you don't know what I'm talking about, last Friday we got our Friday Facts, the first one in several months actually, that discussed some awesome quality of life features and new things added to 1.1 and that 1.1 stable. And they kind of hinted, even more than hinted, they said near the beginning of that Friday Facts that basically saying that they were going to mention their plans for the future this week. On Friday, I would assume. So you guys seem to enjoy the previous videos I've done where I kind of had hopes or predictions for features and stuff like that. This is going to be the same type of thing, but for what they're going to announce and what their plans may be for the future. So let's get right into it. I think, first off, I'm going to list the options or the scenarios I consider to be possible for them to announce, and then out of these kind of ones that I consider to be the most realistic or that I really hope for, there's a couple in here that I'm hoping for most and I think are probably the most realistic. So here are the four. There's actually, I guess, technically five different scenarios, although one of them I consider is so unlikely that it's not really worth considering, but I'll mention it. So first one is that they are going to continue working on Factorio uh, in the sense of adding more things to the base game, meaning that they will add more features and more versions to the actual main game. So it would, they would go to like 1.2 and 1.3, etc., adding more features as they have all the way up until, so far. At least that's option one in my mind. Option two is that they are going to do more with Factorio, but do it in the form of a DLC or expansion. And this would mean that the game as it is, 1.1 stable, is done. There's not going to be any more features or anything with it. I would imagine that they would, of course, still keep up with any bugs that popped up and fix those, but not really adding any more features to the game in its main base form. Instead, working on a separate DLC or expansion, as so many other games have, and adding some pretty major things to that, whether it be a more fleshed out late game, which I'm hoping for. I'll go into that more soon, or just new recipes and technology trees that maybe give you more options for something, or maybe just a biter rework in addition to the combat and enemies. There's so many other things that they could add, in this scenario, they would do that via a DLC or expansion rather than adding onto the base game itself with just more versions. Option three being that they, say, we're going to keep up with the bugs in Factorio, fix anything that comes up, but we're going to work on a whole new game and just leave Factorio. That this is it. It's done, at least for the foreseeable future, quite a while at least, and that they're going to work on a new game. Pretty straightforward. They're going to put most or all of their focus on a new game. Or option four, they say, we this is one I don't consider super likely, and I really hope, really hope it's not the case. I don't think it is. That they say, we're we're done. We may keep a couple devs on to fix any bugs, but we're done. We're not making any more games. We're not adding to Factorio. We're done. We're splitting up or something. I don't know. So basically just poof, done with game development. I don't think that's possible. Really, I mean, it is technically possible, but I really don't consider it likely at all. Just based on the way they worded things and such, and what they've said previously in the past. I just don't really see that as something happening. Or the fifth option, which I consider also very unlikely, but I suppose still possible, is that they split their focus and say, like, hey, we want to start working on a new game, but we also want to add a little more to Factorio, so we're going to have like a few devs in the team like a few members of the team work on some more features in Factorio, and then the rest of us are going to start working on a new game. I don't really think that's something that would happen. That just doesn't. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I mean, in a way it does, and like that would be great. Like we get a new game and we get more Factorio stuff, but I don't really see them splitting their focus. They've never really, they don't. Obviously, they've only been working on Factorio, so there's nothing else for them to split their focus onto. But I just don't really foresee them like splitting the team into parts to work on completely different things, because everyone seems to have a very integral, important part that they play in the development. So having some of those members sitting out from one of the projects or the other just seems like not really the best plan. But who knows? So that's the 5 options. But I think really the most realistic are the first 3 I mentioned, where they either say we're going to add more features to Factorio in its main branch, adding more versions, or we're going to work on it more features via a DLC expansion, or option 3, they're going to work on a new game. Those are what I'm hoping for the most, and that's what I think is the most realistic. It just doesn't, the way they worded it in the Friday Facts and what they said in the past, obviously they could have changed their mind or something happened, but just the way they worded it, it didn't sound like it was negative news, like negative, something coming up. It didn't sound somber or anything like that. It sounded, so I really don't think that they're going to be like just stopping putting out any content of anything for anything and like breaking the team up, something like that. I don't think that's really going to happen, but I thought I'd throw it in there because technically I suppose it's possible. But going more into the 3 things that I consider the most likely and kind of what I would hope or maybe expect to see, it's really hard to actually give some sort of expectation or like guess for some of this. So the first thing where they just add more features to the main branch of the game and more versions. Out of the 3 remaining options, I actually consider that the least likely. And the reasoning for that, here's my reason for that, is, at least I could be totally misinterpreting. This is just my own interpretation. For any of this, I don't really want to put like words in the dev's mouth or anything like that. This is mostly my interpretation, or how I at least interpreted some things they said in the past, but none of this okay, just to clarify, they never said any of this like straight up. Okay. I don't think. Maybe I kind of remember they did, but don't quote me on that. I have the impression that they want Factorio's main, like the main game of Factorio, like what it is now, to be complete itself. So like a 1.1 stable, like I have the impression that they want that's their end game for the main game itself. I just don't really, I just kind of have this feeling that they don't really have plans or intentions to add more to the game in the form of like additional versions in the main branch. That's just kind of my understanding, because they said, 1.0 is going to be, the full release, like not beta anymore, not early access, full release. And then they said 1.1 is going to be where we go and add the things we didn't get to add in 1.0 and fix all the bugs. And I just didn't really get an impression that they were planning to add more like actual features and stuff past that in the main branch of the game. Again, I could be wrong, or maybe they changed their mind. So I actually consider that kind of the least likely of these last 3 options. So also because the main game as we have it now actually feels pretty complete, aside from, in my opinion, this is fully my opinion, aside from the late game. I think I've said this many times, I think the late game is very lacking. But it just doesn't really seem realistic for them to make a whole new late game and revamp the entire late game in the main branch of the game when that hasn't changed this entire time. Like, you would think if they were going to do that, they would have done it before full release. I don't think they would really do that after full release on the main game. So there's that. Second option is the DLC or expansion form. And this is, I'm kind of torn in terms of like if I would prefer this or for them to work on a new game, and I'm like for and against each option for different reasons. Um, I think really considering it, I would prefer this option a bit more than them working on a new game, simply because it will be faster. And we know we know the Factorio devs are not known for their speed of development. And this is not an insult. Like the reason is because they do such a good job. They quality test things so well. They seem to be perfectionists, which is really good for the game development. Everything is just so well done and works so well. When they release something, they don't release a complete buggy mess. It's like they take their time. And now I will say in the past, I think some of that has been poor time management. I don't know if that's still an issue. But if they do like a DLC or expansion, obviously it's going to take a while, but that's going to be a lot faster than starting a new game. Like, if they start a new game, I foresee us not getting any sort of access or anything to that for probably like a year, maybe. I don't, because with Factorio, at least, even if it's like an expansion of some sort, like they still have the main Factorio things already done to work with, and the engine and stuff for it and all that. Whereas starting a new game, it's literally just from scratch, and I feel like it would just take so much longer to get to any playable form that at least that they would consider playable. That we would then get to experience. So that's the only reason I would really prefer an expansion or DLC right now. Just because I think there is more content that can be added to Factorio, and I would really love to see it. Now, in terms of what I kind of expect or would hope for with that, my hope would be some sort of better end game. Like I said, I've said this so many times. It's just my opinion, though. I don't know that everyone agrees with me. I'm sure not everyone does. That I think the end game is very lackluster. Launching the rocket, at least to me, there doesn't really even seem to be much of a point in doing it as the story or like goal itself goes. Like obviously the point, at least to me, the point of launching a rocket is just to get the space science to do like mine productivity or pop speed. It doesn't really feel like any sort of late game. It basically just feels like making a new science pack, but instead of making it in assemblers, you're making it in a rocket silo. Because you launch a rocket with a satellite, but like what? Why? Like what is this doing? It's not like you're launching yourself off the planet, even though it seems like you would potentially have the capability of doing that. Like I don't know if a satellite is supposed to be for like communicating with people to come rescue you. I mean, that's kind of I suppose what logically it would be for, but it just seems like very not fleshed out. Just kind of just you're arbitrarily launching a rocket for some new science. So I feel like that is the main part of the game that can have a lot of content added to it. I don't know in what form. It could be like going into space and building stuff in space, kind of like the space exploration mod. It could be preparing the planet for like new arrivals. Maybe you've got in contact with people from your home planet or something, and they want to come there and colonize it, so you have to prepare it for that. I don't know. Like there's quite a few options, and I'm sure the devs have something in mind, obviously, for whatever they plan to do with whatever option they choose. But I think that that's a main thing that I would like to see, and to me, honestly, would kind of make the most sense with a DLC. There certainly could be like other recipes and tech options and processes that they could add. But to me, they would either have to be optional or something that somehow is incorporated after launching the rocket. Because as things are now, they're fairly balanced and fleshed out from the get-go all the way up to launching a rocket. Like the science is, it's not like there's just some huge gap of like, hey, there's clearly something missing here between when I start and then go to launch a rocket. So it just doesn't seem like it would work very well for them to just add in a bunch of new content like in between. I mean, they could, that they could do it if they did it well enough. They could do it. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So if they did, it seems like it would have to be something optional, like just some alternative way to make some things, or some way to kind of veer off in the tech tree to do some other things but not required. I don't know, it just seems like the main thing that would be added via an expansion would either be late game or something with combat. Now, there is a lot they could do with combat. They could add new biters. So many people have asked for or questioned why there's not flying biters, digging biters, swimming biters, etc., or more combat tools for the player. There's actually quite a few, though, combat tools for the player. I don't really see them doing that either, though, just because they've mentioned. Now, this is something that they have mentioned. This is not just me, projecting. They have said this multiple times before that they don't really think the combat or okay, they haven't said this exactly. This is not exactly their words, but basically that the combat is not the main focus of the game. It's kind of just a sub part of the game, and the main focus is building a factory and automation and stuff like that. So I just don't really see them dedicating all that time and content in an expansion to something that they have purposely not added anything to for quite a long time, because they just don't consider it a main part of the game, which kind of makes sense. We're not playing a wave defense game, really, even though it kind of acts that way sometimes. So I just don't really see them doing that. Now, if they added like a fleshed out late game and then maybe like one new biter type with maybe like one or two new combat options to fight that, I think that would be really cool. Not like a ton of new enemy mechanics, but just like one new biter type, or enemy type rather. Biters are, one new enemy type of the biter race, I suppose. And then maybe a couple ways to combat that, and most of the content focus is on late game. I think that would be really cool. So there's that. Kind of my thoughts, predictions for that. Last option is that they say we're gonna work on a new game. Again, the main downside for this, for me, is that it would be a really long time before we got any content whatsoever, which obviously it's a new game. That's understandable. Like, I wouldn't expect them to do it instantly. I wouldn't want them to, but just compared to making a Factorio expansion, it's going to take a lot longer. However, this is still a very exciting prospect that they would make a new game. The other slight downside for me is it kind of depends what game they make. Obviously, everyone has different things they like, different types of games they like, different things that appeal to them. So what I'm about to say is purely my opinion and just what I like in games. This may be complete opposite for you, but it would be actually like kind of a disappointment for me if they were like, hey, we're going to make a new game and it's going to be like a puzzle solving, like puzzle solving platform, or like a platformer game or something, because that's just not my style of game. Like, I don't doubt the devs could make an absolutely amazing game regardless of what category it's in, but like, that's just not my style. Like, I probably wouldn't play it just because I don't like those kind of games. I just don't find them appealing. Or even if they say, we're gonna make some like super story-driven RPG, Witcher, cyberpunk-esque type game, I think they'd do a great job. I think it'd be awesome. I still probably wouldn't play it because, like The Witcher 3 is like, groundbreaking. It was like groundbreaking. It is an awesome game. Pretty much everyone loves it. And I tried playing it and I just didn't like it. And it's not because it's a bad game. It's just that type of game just does not appeal to me at all. Now, if they say they're going to make a new game and they say they're going to make like an RTS type of game, I will be super excited because I love RTS games. I think it's close enough to Factorio to where a lot of the audience would still enjoy it. Again, like an RPG game is pretty far away, I think, from Factorio. So if they do something like that, I think less of the current audience would really appreciate it. Potentially, I'm not saying that if you play one, you don't play the other, but just generally, I think RTS has a fairly-ish similar play type to Factorio, and I think the devs could do really a truly groundbreaking, like, amazing RTS game. There are so many RTS games that have come out but there haven't really been a ton lately, at least not good ones. So it seems like there's kind of a gap to be filled there, just like there was a gap to be filled for factory building games when they first started Factorio, and look what happened there. Um, and I just think with their attention to detail and their need for their ability to polish things and just quality of life and just the way they make games, and very unique like graphical styles as well. I mean, Factorio, Factorio is not the prettiest game ever, but it still has, at least in my mind, a fairly appealing, unique graphical style. Like even if they took like the Factorio graphical style, not necessarily the perspective, although that is kind of how most RTS games are played, but like if they took the general Factorio graphical style and made an RTS with that style, I think that would be really cool. And then put their own twists on it. I just think they could do such a good job with that. So if they announced like that, I would probably be equally as excited for that as a Factorio DLC. We would just have to wait longer for it. And that's kind of my thoughts. I can't really do many more predictions than that. For all I know, I don't know. I don't know. We'll wait till Friday and see what the deal is. I'll be interested to see how close or far off from the mark I am with my thoughts here. I hope you guys enjoyed. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know down below what your thoughts are. If you agree with some of mine, if you really disagree with mine, if you have ones I didn't mention, what you're kind of thinking, and stuff, or what you're hoping for. I would love to hear that down below. And if you like this or agree with any of what I said, feel free to leave a like. It's much appreciated. And subscribe if you're new to the channel. Keep up with all the content. I just thought this would be really fun to do. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to this Friday to see what they tell us, one way or the other. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I appreciate it. And leave your thoughts below. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.